we'll jump straight into the halls. Alright, I'm gonna be doing a commentary on my VOD. There's a halls fort run from probably a few weeks back. I'm just gonna kind of go through the entire dungeon, talking about defensives, what I normally do, how to do certain polls, what I have improved since, and maybe some other stuff. Either way, let's jump straight into it. Give me 1 second. Alright. Okay. So, for this first poll, it's going to be a CC on the first Thundercaller. Double Thundercaller is very sketchy, especially with a pug. So you definitely only want to have one up at a time. Right here, I thought we were shrouding. That's why I kind of invis passed, but we didn't shroud. We just went ahead, so I had to come back out and pick him up. Just real quick, if you guys notice on my plater details, whenever a target, has this kind of striped background or frame, that's usually my focus. My focus target is always above my target frame. And I use a focus kick macro, and I would highly recommend, everybody to do this, because what this allows you to do, it allows you to target your prio targets that need to be killed, targets that have higher health, etc. And this will be more damage efficient. In my opinion, this is one of the skills that a lot of people are lacking. A lot. And it's not a skill, it's just a simple UI adjustment. It's something that players need to get used to. And I'm talking about players who have, title, who are, at the title. They do not, or there are a good number of players who do not have focus kick. So just wanted to point that out before I continue. It's very, very important to have this, because then you can actually do damage to whatever target you need to kill first. Okay. Anyways. So at the start here, Drake always does a breath. Should be pretty simple though. I always have rage with my incarn there just to do damage, so usually it's fairly safe. I did pop a bark skin there as well, but it's because I'm running double SI, so I have SI for the next two as well if I need it. So there's another SI, and then I will have an SI for the next, and then if it really comes down to it, I'll have more stuff later. I was supposed to pick up the second Thundercaller the moment we killed the first, but I didn't because I forgot to. So just something to keep in mind. This is not something you want to do on Bolster Week though. On Bolster Weeks, you definitely do not pick up the Thundercaller yet. Something to keep in mind. And the other thing, this is like for Guardian Druids, but this applies to almost every tank. Your stuns, your disorients, knockbacks, those can be used as interrupts. I know a lot of, I've heard a lot of tanks complain about, how their pugs don't kick and stuff like that. And that is true. That's definitely true. But you can only do so much in terms of, figuring out what your pugs are going to do. If you're pugging, you'll have all sorts of players, so it's going to be really difficult. What you want to be doing, though, is doing as much as you possibly can, and that includes using your Typhoon, your Disorienting Roar to stop casts. And I'm going over that right now because this boss is like pretty AFK. For this boss, usually, you just pop your shit for damage. I run Bristling Fur, so I use Bristling Fur only for the bleed. It's most rage generation. And sometimes certain sets of Horns of Valor line up with the bleed. I forgot. Bloodletting, that's what it's called. I believe it's the third Horn of Valor that lines up with Bloodletting, and that's the one you want to prop your Bristling for a little earlier if you're running it for rage generation. Aside from that, I mean, you can just use your Tooth and Claws if you want a bit more defensiveness. Either way, this boss is like, fairly simple. The way I normally do this boss, though, is I'll pull the boss towards one of the two edges, and then I'll look for the Drake as the tank, since melee will usually be following me there. So you do a quick scan, figure out where it is, and then you pull the boss over towards where that Drake is. If the Drake is in the center, then I usually use a Roar. Right here I use the Roar because there were two spinning swords on each side. Now, another thing I usually like to do is I actually like to keep the boss here for quite a while. I don't bring him back into the center immediately unless the first breath was in the center. Then you need to bring the boss back in immediately. And the reason why I like to leave the boss on the edge longer is because he will always do one of those dancing blades. And so you want to, well, he'll usually do two dancing blades, but I'll usually let the boss drop one of the dancing blades on one of the two edges. And that way you'll have a little bit more space in the center, just to minimize the amount of, mistakes that can happen, because we've all been there where a ranged DPS accidentally gets clipped by it, because they do move a little bit minor. All right, so going to the next pull. These mystics are one melee interrupt on each one, and the only thing that you kick is the Holy Radiance. You don't have to worry about the rune of healing. When you do pull the bottom pack up, I always pop Bark Skin or Rage of the Sleeper, because I have no Iron Fist Axe. Just remember, you always want to pop a defensive going to a pull because you have low defensives, okay? Very low defensives. And I do believe I was in voice during this dungeon, so I believe we already had assigned kicks, but usually Big already knows what he's doing if we weren't in voice. And then the last rune carver, one thing to note about that mob is if you stop the initial etch cast, he does a cast and then he channels the etch. But if you stop the initial cast with a disorient, a knockback, a fear, then it will immediately recast etch. So if you are out of interrupts, then what you want to do is you want to let the initial etch cast finish and then stop the channel with a disorient or whatever you have. Okay, real quick, I'm just gonna rewind because right here on this pull, we do have our rogue sap the Thundercaller, and the reason why is because, again, it's just we have two mystics here to kick, and while yes, we could bring in that Thundercaller, it's just a little sketchy. I think it's absolutely fine if you're playing with a comp with high kicks and you're already coordinated. it's absolutely fine to do because you can definitely have like a rogue lock down a Thundercaller for a very long time. The rogue can get probably the first kick, kidney shot it, um, uh, uh, just a million stops. You can probably get forgot the spells of the rogue, but they can stop it with another disorient, and then they can kick it again. So they have like the first 4 kicks if need be. And then as far as the mystics go, it doesn't need to just be a melee kick. It can be a ranged DPS player who kicks the first one, and then for the second cast, he can use like a fear, whatever other CC he has available. So I usually have my Devastation Evoker kick the first cast, and then he'll knock the second cast with either Trail Swipe or forgot what the other one was called. Devastation Invokers have 2 knocks. And Holy Radiance does not recast. Etch is, I believe, the only cast in this dungeon that will recast immediately when you interrupt it with a non-kick. With like, if you stop the cast with a disorient, fear, knockback, etc. So for this pull, I almost always pull it kind of like towards the wall here. You want to do that so that the pat doesn't pull by accident. One thing to note, if you do not pull it towards the wall, there is a chance that these caster mobs are in range of the guardian's in uninterruptible aura. So these casters will, kill you guys for the most part. That has definitely happened to us in the past, where Etch was uninterruptible, and it's just a guaranteed kill on one of our party members. Okay, so after you finish those 2 casters, you definitely want to, and normally for those casters, you want to pop some defensives just to be careful. I'll chain up all the way. It just depends on the week. If it's Bolster, then obviously you don't want to chain, but Sanguine is okay. Up here, I pull everything. It is a little scary on Fort Weeks, but it's okay. Same thing again though. Have your focus target on the Purifier so you can kick. Right here for these mobs, these Shield Maidens, they do a frontal that you can dodge by just stepping like, 3 to 4 steps out. Very easy. Right there, whenever you want to interrupt the Purifier, which is fine, I would highly recommend you use some kind of CC so that you don't take a million hits. So right there, let me rewind real quick. So there's 2 Breach Armors and 3 Breach Armors, a Mortal Hue, and probably, another Breach Armor. So if you go back in there and you take all of these hits, there is a very high chance you die. The Breach Armor doesn't do too much damage, assuming you have Iron Fur stacks up. However, it will lower your armor enough to the point where if you get hit by like a Mortal Hue, there is, a high chance you're gonna get one shot. So I go in there, I kick, and I use a disorienting roar immediately to make sure I don't get hit by too many frontals. But again, as you can see here, just continue cutting little circles. It's a little difficult on Sanguine Week, but you just gotta try your best. And the reason I'm kind of kiting it in this specific kind of like ovalish shape is I want to keep them close enough to where my range DPS can go down the stairs. As you can see, my range DPS, they're going down the stairs to line the leap from the Valkyrie. That way, the aspirant does not, run all the way out, and we can continue cleaving on it. So that is something to note. But for the most part, if you're getting hit by a lot of frontals here, if you notice, you're chunking in damage, chances are it's because you're getting hit by Mortal Hues, Breach Armors, etc. And that just means you're not moving enough. Right here, I do accidentally pull the mini boss. But luckily, we were able to salvage the situation, even though it was on a sanguine week. Normally we do pull the mini bosses together though, okay? And the timing is you pull the Eye of the Storm mini boss first, and then when he does his initial cast on the dome, so he drops the dome and then he does like the channel to indicate the start of Eye of the Storm. Around like 70 to 80% of the cast of the Eye of the Storm, you can pull in Olmir, um, and then the timing will work out such that as the Eye of the Storm ends, the other mini boss will start casting its Sanctify. And so you will have about probably 3 to 4 seconds, which is how long the cast lasts. So let me just rewind real quick. So this is the cast I was talking about. He'll drop the dome and then he's casting. And right now I would pull the other mini boss. Okay. Right now I would pull the other mini boss in. Usually for that mini boss, it's like one kick before the Sanctify, and then at the end of Sanctify, you'll have to kick him again, and then you'll have to kick him 2 more during the storm. So make sure you don't miss those kicks, because that is a very easy way to die. During Eye of the Storms, try to use Bristling Fur. You'll see it on Herja, where pretty much you'll save. Actually, I don't know if I did it on 4 week, but on Tyrant weeks, I always save Bristling Fur for the dome. Very important. It guarantees you can proc an After the Wildfire, and on a high enough Tyrant key, you will sometimes be able to proc 2 After the Wildfires if you pull up for the start of the Eye of the Storm. I didn't do the inversion because this was like, I don't know, 3-4 weeks back, something like that. However, the inversion trick is very easy. Naowh has a guide on it. Would recommend just doing it on all weeks. It's super easy to do. There is no downside to doing it. Alright, now for Herja Beam. Herja Beam is slightly okay, so it's on a 30-second rotation for the most part. Normally what I'll do is, depending on whether I have Incarn or not, because sometimes I pop Incarn on the mini bosses, we kill it fast enough, and then I won't have Incarn at the start. But generally speaking, the rotation will be something along the lines of, or it's not really a rotation, it's more of like a priority system. Do I have Tooth and Claw? If I have a Tooth and Claw proc, then Bark Skin plus Tooth and Claw will be plenty on a 4 week. Bark Skin Rage the Sleeper will also be plenty on a 4 week. On a Tyrant week, however, you might need a bit more. So on Tyrant weeks, generally speaking, if I have a Tooth and Claw, I am not comfortable with using just Tooth and Claw plus Rage of the Sleeper. I'll usually either only do that if I have Incarn up. I need that extra health boost. Otherwise, I just do not feel comfortable. Alternatively, if you don't have those, then you just have to pop both Bark and Rage of the Sleeper. So on Tyrant weeks, normally my rotation is Incarn plus Rage or Incarn plus Bark on the first one, and then the second one, I'll do SI. On the third, I'll usually do like a Bark plus Tooth and Claw. Otherwise, it's going to be like Rage plus Bark again, and then fourth one, another SI. Fifth one, you should have Incarn backup, and you can pop Bark again with that. And then sixth one, usually it's like a healer external. And then if you have another one after that, that's actually okay as well because SI should be back up. But again, you can save some defensives, usually on fort weeks. Highly dependent on whether you have a Tooth and Claw proc. Okay, for this pack right here, I forgot to mention it, but at the start of this pull, you really want to make sure you pop a defensive because the snapshot from the marksman absolutely trucks. So right here, you can see I popped Incarn, Rage, plus Barkskin, just going into this pull. Because once you get your Iron Fur stacks up, then this pull doesn't really matter at all. Like, it's irrelevant. But I'm pretty sure a lot of tanks have chunked heavily going into this pull when they don't have a defensive up. Because that snapshot fucks. Okay. So we're going to fast forward a little bit. If you ever need, by the way, you can come here in line, kind of like behind these trees, to pull them in. However, be careful. The mobs, specifically the archer, will sometimes fervent strike. They'll snapshot one of your party members, and that's a guaranteed kill, which is a guaranteed death. Okay, so the trick here to not pull the dragon is you kind of want to look up. I know I didn't look up here because I just kind of have the timing down now. But if you look up top on the cliff, the dragon is just sitting there. And the moment you see the dragon kind of like move, any kind of movement, it'll usually like flap its wings or some shit like that. You move back, okay? You move backwards. And then you just wait until the dragon has fully landed. And fully landed means he stops his breathing shit and the deer have all ran away. So right there. So he's fully landed and now we jump. As you can see, the deer are running away. Now you can jump across. If you go earlier than that, you will aggro the dragon. Okay, coming into Fenrir. So, not too many people know this, but Fenrir is not people don't know this, but rather it's a little deceptive which phase of Fenrir is more dangerous. I would argue this phase of Fenrir is more dangerous as of right now, since they've nerfed the bleed on the actual boss portion of the Fenrir. So right here, after the leaps, after the Ravenous leaps, Fenrir can do 3 Blood Frenzy or whatever, something Claw? I don't know, the AoE ability, what it's called. You can do 3 Claw Frenzies, that's what it's called. You can do 3 Claw Frenzies, and that is very, very scary on a high enough key. So just make sure, you are prepared for that. Make sure you have defensives for it, or rather your party has defensives for it. I don't think you'll ever die as a tank. But what you can do as a Guardian Druid is prep heals. You can prep heals for it. After the wildfire procs. Usually speaking, your healer will have the first one covered with some kind of healing CD. The second one is where I would normally proc an after the wildfire, because that way you'll guarantee you're topped off for the third. And as long as you can live the third, then you should be okay. Obviously, there'll be a ravenous sleep afterwards, but generally speaking, you know, DPS players are a little bit more, what's the word? More responsible for their health, I guess. For targeted abilities, but for AoE abilities, a lot of the times they're just like, oh, healer's job, I don't care, I'm not popping a defensive, or they just don't care, they just don't pay attention on the AoE abilities. But for targeted abilities like Ravenous Sleep, they'll be like, oh shit, I'm low, I need to pop a health pot, or I need to pop a defensive, etc. So normally the second Claw Frenzy is where I like to pop after the Wildfire proc. Right here, our rogue messed up the leap thing. The way the vanish rogue thing works, if for whatever reason people don't know, is when it chooses its 4 targets, the boss will always leap at the furthest target first. So if your rogue gets targeted, he needs to be the furthest target away from the boss. So that means your ranged players need to stay in melee. If your ranged players are not far enough out, or are not stacked in melee, like underneath the boss, then flame them. And just real quick for this chase, the Scent of Blood, the general like position is around this bone. So this bone right here. This is how far out you want the boss to be in order for your players to have enough room to run all the way to the back of the cave without getting meleeed. If you're a little too close, like by this fish area right here, then that the very last tick of Scent of Blood, whoever's getting focused will get hit. All right, so we're about to do a work pull, and real quick, let me just rewind a little bit to show you the rocks that are available. So they're up on this little ledge here. It's kind of hard to see. Let me see if I can find like, it's like right here. Okay, so right here. So there's one tip right here, another tip right here, and then there's a third tip underneath my target nameplate. Those are like the 3 spots to use for the wargs to not leap. And we like to do it on the cave because range will have more uptime. You'll have more room as a tank to kite. However, it can get a little tricky because these fish bones can block your path a little bit. Generally speaking, you can run on top of the head. However, because, you know, there's some like rocks over here on this side, if you try to go clockwise, you'll sometimes get stuck. If you go counterclockwise, you'll also sometimes get stuck by like the tree area. There's a little tree, not this one, but there's another one afterwards I'll show. But just be wary when you try to do this. And the reason why we do this work pull afterwards is because you have the haste buff. This way you'll never have to really tank the wolves. So at the start of this pull, I'm going to pop Incarn, Bark, and just kind of like, you know, get a few Thrash swipes off. I pop SI as well, and then I also call for TD. I just want to be in here, make sure I have aggro, and then I start kiting. Be very careful. So right here, like I said, I just got stuck right there. And right there, again, if you just kind of like greed for damage, which I always do because I'm an idiot, you can die pretty much like instantly. So I would not recommend trying to do this kind of retard shit I'm doing right now, which is trying to, you know, min-max damage a bit. Generally speaking, just Moonfire and run. Yeah, after I dipped that low, I was like, I'm not I'm just not gonna fuck with this pack anymore. And then I for the most part, just played it safe. You do need to jump around these two areas that I had mentioned about the head area. You do want to jump a little bit. Alright. I'm gonna fast forward a little bit. And then for the bear pole, the bears, you don't want to take a sharp U-turn because that is pretty much the only way to really die against the bears. When you take a sharp, it doesn't even need to be a sharp U-turn, but if it's not like a wide circle, then there is a chance you will die. So what happens with these bears is every single time they charge you, they 90% slow you for like a second or so. And every single time after the charge, they will cast, I think it was like the rending swipe. I forgot which one is which, but essentially you just don't want to get hit by it. It does a lot of damage, and so if you have the debuff as well, which is just you take increased damage, you will definitely die. So you definitely do not want to take a sharp U-turn, because that's the only way you really die, is where they charge you and then they charge you while you're doing a U-turn, but because you weren't running straight away from it, like just furthest, like the shortest path away from it, because you weren't doing that, it's gonna hit you. There is a range on that swipe ability. And it has happened to me before where I get triple charged one after the other, perfect in succession, and it is very deadly. Okay, very, very deadly. But aside from that one should be a very simple pull. All right, in order to get back from this dragon, there are two ways to go about it. You can jump up on the left if you have some kind of like DH jump, evoker jump. You can stealth past the dragon. If you don't have stealth, I think you can, well, if you're a priest, you can fade it. However, if you don't have anything, that's fine. You can hug this tree right here on the right. If you kind of have to go into the trees, and you just continue hugging right, and you should be safe to just walk by. You shouldn't need anything to get by that dragon. All right, I believe we are going to do the beer tech. The way it works is you throw the beers before you talk to the first mini boss, and when you use the beers, what it'll do is it'll turn them kind of like hostile towards it can essentially start brawling each other. They can start brawling each other, I guess is the best way to put it. So the king that you activate, you drag that one to the other kings that you've thrown the beer on, and once they start attacking him, like they start swinging, you'll see the animation. You can drag the one you activated towards the next one, and then you just keep dragging if you want to activate all four. But usually speaking, I generally only activate 3 now, because the fourth one is very scary. It is the one that casts Sever. It is King Haldor, the one that's green right now. Also, when you pull these out, by the way, once Renulf gets aggroed, you want to pull it out just a little bit, because when they're running back, as you see here, he turns green and then he starts running back. That is when you want to talk to him. If you let him get back into his original starting location, you have maybe 0.2 seconds to talk to him. But if you talk to him as he's running back, and they do run back very fast, but it guarantees that you'll activate him. And I believe this is Little Wigs that does the automatic trigger. Don't quote me on that. I'm sure there are plenty of things that do that though. DBM, weak auras, etc. One last thing to note. The reason why we do it in this order, by the way, is because Renulf is the guy that you need to interrupt. If you activate Renulf first, then what ends up happening is he will most likely be the first target to die, and then you will have 3 targets to interrupt if you want to chain. If you want to chain Haldor in. And that's not the best if you do not have like a prop paladin or melee kicks. So essentially, the first target that we activated just summons these ancestors. You just gotta kind of like slowly cut around the room. And the moment you drop one of the kings, or you kill one of the kings, you can activate the last one, which is Haldor. And Haldor again applies the Sever Axe. The reason why you don't want to pull him with the others is because that Sever can stack up infinitely if he has no other abilities. So what you want to do is you want to have at least one of the other kings killed. That way, due to the spell queuing of these abilities, there is a chance Sever will reset before the application of the next stack. So let me show, I think it was a little bit earlier. It happened right here. So as you can see, Sever, give me a sec. As you can see, I have the Sever debuff right now, 4 seconds, 3 seconds. And it's going to drop off right here. So it just dropped off before he does the next Sever, since he has like, 4 abilities at the moment. And so it just spell queues through the abilities. And that helps a lot. I believe even when he only had 2, let me just rewind real quick. So alright. Maybe around right here. So he should be severing right there. Yep, I have the sever. And then we're about to kill Bjorn. And I believe even this sever drops off before I get the next one. So as you can see, his sever on like, kind of the icon next to his nameplate, he's already ready to do it. But as you can see, as he's casting, my debuff is about to fall off. And perfect, it fell off right as the new application came in. If you have this guy along with the 3 other kings, if you tank all 4 at once, you better be ready to have life grip, or like, your evoker rescues, something like that, because stampeding roar is not enough to get away. They run very, very fast, and they cannot be CC'd or slowed. Yeah. Generally speaking, if you need a reset, you ask for the life grip like with 3 seconds left on your debuff, something like that, and then you stampeding roar and you just continue running. You can maybe even do like 4 to 5 seconds maybe. Alright. I'm not gonna really go over this next boss too much because it's pretty straightforward. If you're running Bristling Fur, you can kind of sit in the circles and just, take some extra damage. Really doesn't hurt much. I guess on Fort Weeks, the Mighty Slash, whatever it's called. Let me see, he's about to do it. Maybe. It's not the Fellblade Rush, it's the other ability. Savage Blade, that thing. That thing does a lot of fizz, but realistically, it's not very dangerous at all. So just use something on it and you'll be okay. Gonna fast forward a little bit. Oh, and for any tanks that forget to pick up the shield because I've done that a lot, I'll share the pick up shield weak aura that's on my screen. I'll share that in the description down below. Alright. I'm just gonna kind of go into the next boss. So the last boss is a big DPS check, and and obviously, you know, getting to your runes is very dangerous. You can minimize the number of complications, deaths, traffic, whatever you want to call it, during the rune phase by dragging the boss towards the outer edge and making sure your group drops spears, not in the inner ring. So generally speaking, the way the sequence of abilities is always going to be 2 spears, and then he does a suck-in where you have to run out of his ring. You're killing the ad. Then he drops 1 more set of spears. Then the rune phase. So, in other words, it's always going to be 3 sets of spears and then rune phase. So that's 1. I mean, at the start is very easy. I always pretty much just, you know, kind of keep it on the edge if possible. So for the ring, the suck-in, whatever you want to call it, the direction we always run to is towards the ad. And if it's super far away, or if you have like a bad ring, you get sucked in, whatever, you can always shapeshift into cat form as a druid. The obliterators don't melee, so you don't have to worry about that. But again, just try to keep the spears on the edge because there is 1 more set of spears coming at the end. Definitely try to pop a defensive during the intermission or during the rune phase. It does hurt quite a bit, especially since you're going to be getting meleeed still while getting to your rune. And then as you can see here, we're trying to drag it to the back. Also, we had discussed going clockwise prior to starting the dungeon, which is why we're kind of going, you know, through the spears, which is a little weird. And the reason why we're doing this is so that we can keep the spears a little grouped up. But not just that, it's also so that our group is grouped up so that we can use defensives, AoE defensives, when triple spears occur. So right here, we're going to have another rune phase, but then coming out of this, the next set of spears will be a triple set. Okay, it'll be a triple. So it's after the second rune phase. This next set of spears is going to be a triple. And this is where it's going to one-shot DPS on a high enough key if you do not pop a defensive. So right here, we used Zephyr, and I believe the second set of spears we had discussed was personals. So right here, that second set of spears, personals. And then we're obviously going to get sucked in, looking at the ad. And then we're going to have 1 more set of spears, and that set of spears is going to be Zephyr again. We had all of this planned out prior to coming to the dungeon. So definitely these are things you want to do, you know, making sure your DPS know how you're going to use defensives on Herja, how you're going to use defensives on Odin. Do they know the spots on the rocks to jump on, etc. All very important. Last thing you know is if you do have a DPS dead during like the third set, during the triple spears, it will only drop 2 spears instead. So then you won't have to use your defensives. That is a way to prolong the fight, I guess. Because you can go up to the 3rd intermission. It is doable. But chances are you'll probably wipe. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any recommendations or suggestions on what other kind of commentary you would like when I do these VOD reviews, then do leave a comment leave a comment down below.